Welcome, everybody. Saturday AM Live. I'm a little tattered this morning, which I think we all probably are if we have a heart and understand what's going on in the wider world right now. Um, so, just a quick, brief introduction to myself. I'm a holistic integrative vet I practice in South Florida. I also do telehealth consultations, and I've been doing this now for over 25 years. I initially went to veterinary school in the mid 1990s because I wanted to practice integrative medicine. So I've been doing integrative holistic care for my own health as well my entire life. I just had to have an exam for an insurance policy, and I don't have a real doctor's name and number to give to them. So hopefully I won't need one of those. And I try to keep my own health as good as possible. So I'm not gonna I think it's good to get our minds off of what's going on, but I think this is not a moment to bypass or spiritually bypass what is happening in the world right now. Someone I follow on Substack wrote a really good piece on this, which speaks to how what I am feeling in my own heart about it. And for those of you who were around during 9/11, um, this has a very, very similar feel to 9/11 and to the tragedy that happened that day. And I remember right after 9/11 happened, I was actually out driving around doing house calls yesterday, and there was just a different feeling in the air. People were off the streets. You could tell that there was an opening. Things were shook up. Now, we also happen to be in a very, very powerful eclipse portal right now. An eclipse energy can come along. We might be driving down a straight line, thinking we're headed somewhere, and then all of a sudden there's a hard, sharp right turn. And obviously, we've had a really hard, sharp right turn. So, but what I wanted to say is thinking back to 9/11, there was a certain period of time that did not last more than a few days where it was like there was an opening like there was a warp, there was a wrinkle in time, an opening in the time space continuum that would allow people to come together in unity, that would have allowed countries to come together. Countries that we had been at war with on 9/11 were calling up and giving their condolences. And the same thing is happening right now, except there's a difference. And that difference, I believe, has its roots in social media and in these phones and in where I'm talking to you right now. And that difference is there's a whole subsection of people who are actually like happy to see somebody die. And I think we really need to take that into our hearts and realize how there's younger generations that have really taken a wrong turn and they need to be guided back somehow, somewhere. But I also the subject of my talk today was going to be about coming together and coming together in the holistic animal care field. I just attended the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Associations. It was their 40th year. I have the t-shirt on to prove it. Last weekend. And I have to say, I have not been a super active member throughout the years. There have even been many years when I have not paid my membership dues, but I keep going back to this organization. And one of the reasons is it brings me together, it brings people together, and it brings it's a safe space for those of us that think about medicine differently to come together. Now, the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association has played a really huge role in my own career. When I was I had just gotten out of college. I had graduated as a zoologist. There's another zoologist out there now doing animal consults, but I had graduated as a zoologist with a specialty actually in animal behavior. And I was trying to figure out what to do with the rest of my life. Somebody's trying to get a hold of me. I'm not quite sure. So I was trying to figure out what to do with the rest of my life, and I was working in a veterinary practice, and the veterinarian in the practice, I literally as a kennel tech, I was cleaning dog cages and cat cages and walking dogs and washing food bowls and feeding and watering and washing dirty blankets and giving them baths. Okay, that's how I started out. And he said, "Oh, there's a box of books. Why don't you just take it out to the trash?" Well, I'm not one to throw away books ever, ever, ever. So I started digging through there, and I happened to find Dr. Pitcairn's book of natural healing and health. In the front of that book, on the title page, was a um, dedication to the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association. And my eyes lit up, my heart lit up. I was like, "What? Wait a minute. There's an association of holistic vets?" And it happened in those days, we didn't have our phones to look up phone numbers. It happened to have the phone number written in the book. So I dialed it and I was so excited. And I'm like, how do I do this? How do I do this? So seeing the association's number and phone number, having somebody to call to say, how do I do this, led me on my career path and led me to where I am today. Now, also, when I was in veterinary school, I we had student associations of OVMA. I'm going to call it OVMA from here on out. We had student associations, and I was president of our student association first, second, and third year through veterinary school. And as president, I would attend the annual conferences. I would talk to all of these amazing people, Alan Schoen, Christine Chambreau, Pedro Rivera, uh, Stephen Blake, Mark Haverkos, there's so many, Cheryl Schwartz, so many, and I would have them plead with them to come to the veterinary school and teach us as vet students. So I brought in homeopathy, chiropractic, acupuncture, all these different modalities, and we even had a yearly conference at the veterinary school. So not only was I getting an education from these amazing people by going to the conference, by learning, I learned about medicinal mushrooms from Ihor Basco. It had to be in 1996. He had a cookie tray of reishi and cordyceps and chaga laid out. And I was like, who is this person? And what are these mushrooms? I ended up doing one of my externships in Hawaii with him in 1997 before I graduated. So this is how important this organization was in getting me to where I am today, to where I can practice, to where I can sit here on Substack with you and talk about holistic veterinary medicine. So it is near and dear to my heart. Now, the past few years, COVID almost did it in, as well as with a lot of nonprofits. Nonprofits are structured where they have a board of directors and they have an executive director. Unfortunately, the executive director, who had been part of AVMA since its inception, became too old to carry on the duties and retired. And they hired an executive director to come in from outside to help with all the administration things. He did not have the same values and missions that coincided with the organization, and he ended up wiping out all of their funds and almost bankrupting the organization with choices that were made. So, and he was a very bullish personality as well, and a lot of holistic vets aren't that outgoing to push up against it. So, anyways, he is now out of there. There is a brand new board of directors. There is a brand new executive director. And I spoke to all of them. I also ended up being at the conference, and this is just because I think who I am. This has always happened to me in my life. Everybody was coming up to me about suggestions, recommendations, things that had happened that, like, why can't we do this? And why isn't this happening? So I was literally running back and forth between the new board of directors, the outgoing president, the executive director, along with vendors coming up to me with their issues and problems they were having, um, students, other veterinarians, and kind of as a go-between. There were also some very big influencers in the area, staying in the hotel, and there with us for dinner during but not attending the conference because there's been some really bad, I guess I'm just gonna say there's been some really bad blood over the years because of the way it all really comes down to miscommunications between people. But the holistic veterinary community is such a small community. We are all working on the same side to improve the lives of our dogs and cats. And I am putting a call out to the social media influencers out there, whether they be veterinarians, whether they be pet parents, whether they be nutritionists. I am putting a call out to all of the vendors. There were so many vendors that were not there, um, that are providing really, really good commercial raw foods, that are providing vitamins, supplements, probiotics, all of this great stuff for our pets. And I'm putting a call out there to veterinary students who are interested in alternative medicine to please check out and support this organization right now. It is one way that we can all come together to make a difference. One of the big issues is that the organization is also accepted by the AVMA. We are we have a toe into the AVMA. I'm not sure how all the structures of that works, but it's just very important. It gives us a place for support. It gives us that think alternatively a place to come together, to network, to talk to people, to have professional support, to have medical support when we have cases, and to just know that, wow, we're not out there floating out there all alone. Plus, it gives a way to produce more holistic veterinarians out in the world and more integrative veterinarians out in the world. Because one of the biggest things that I see is a huge complaint. Well, there's no holistic vets in my area. There's nobody we can find. There's nobody to use. Now, number one, a lot of us are doing telehealth. I'm doing telehealth. You're not going to I don't use a computerized calendar because I don't work that way. But you can always private message me on Facebook and you can email me from my website. You can even direct message me here. Okay. But we need more people that think the way we do. And this is one way to get there. So I have volunteered to be on the committee that is bringing back the student chapters of the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association. Because that's another program during COVID that just literally fell apart and almost died. We only had 4 students at the conference this year. So by having the student chapters, we're gathering a list of mentors that are willing, veterinarians that are willing to work with their local student chapters or go into schools and lecture at schools and bring this information into the veterinary schools directly to the students and to let the students know there is all of these modalities here and a different way of doing medicine than what they're being taught in vet school. There are different things to use besides pharmaceuticals. So I'm going to be involved in that. Um, Again, so the conference, so this is my call out to everybody and even pet parents. You can go to their website AHVMA, American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association.org. If you have money to give, the organization could really utilize it right now. I want to put up a booth at one of the largest veterinary conferences in the world. It's called VMX in Orlando. We can get a booth for the organization for $995 and get exposure to over 27,000 veterinarians. Vet students go to that conference because they have free entrance to the conference. So we could get enough exposure to all of those different veterinarians. I told the organization, they're like, well, we don't have money to send somebody and pay for hotel and food and everything else. I told them I would volunteer 3 days of my time to sit at that table and hand out brochures and talk to people about this form of medicine to try to get more vets interested. So if any of you know somebody who's going to be at the conference, or if any of you know somebody who would want to sponsor or even put some money in the dish to sponsor that table, that would be wonderful so we could get it done. Because right now, the executive director, I've put an email out to her. We don't know if the organization has enough money to fund that table. Okay, that's where we're sitting. So please, any support that we can get is just so well needed right now. I was now off my soapbox from that, but again, it has to do with all of us coming together. There are people that have a lot of influence on social media, much more influence than I have, and it would be really great if they could put a word out for the organization just to let people know that it even exists. Okay. And the thing about it is, it's an umbrella organization. It's not meant to be just TCVM. It's not meant to be just homeopathy. They really don't even care what modalities you practice as long as you fit under this umbrella. There's most of it's nutritionists, but it was the very first organization founded to give everybody a home and to give us a little bit of political power when it comes to the veterinary world. Okay. Now, the conference was amazing. I was so glad I went. And while it was in my backyard, a lot of times I don't go because it's all the way over out in California and it is a big expense. And honestly, I was not flying during COVID. I am flying now. But during COVID, it was just, I wasn't going to do it. So I found I got to spend, and this is what this conference can give to holistic vets. I got to spend 8 hours going through an entire herbal materia medica with David Winston. Now, David Winston is one of the top herbalists in the United States. He has a company called Herbalist and Alchemist. I believe he formed it all the way back in the 1960s. He's amazing with herbs. He was the one who taught me about nettle seed extract for kidney failure. I sat there for 8 hours, like an entire day of lectures, and we went from point A to point B through all the adaptogens, through the alteratives, through vulneraries, all these different categories of herbs. And every time I hear that man, I learn more things. So that was just like a huge highlight of the conference for me. Second, I went to an entire day of track on anthroposophical medicine. Now, anthroposophical medicine was started by a man named Rudolf Steiner in the early 1900s. And Rudolf Steiner also formed what is called anthroposophy, which is, oh my goodness, it came out of a school of thought called Theosophy in the late 1800s that was run by Madame Blavatsky. And a lot of their take on things was combining Western theological and philosophical thought with Eastern philosophical and theological thought, from like Buddhism and Ayurveda combining with Western. And then Rudolf Steiner branched out on his own, and he developed his own Christian community. He developed biodynamic gardening, a way to garden where the plants you garden by the sun and the moon and the stars and the soil health. This was way before we were even talking about organic gardening. He developed a system of education called Waldorf schools, where the child was educated to be critical thinkers and keep their imagination open. I happened to go to a Waldorf school for 6 years. It is why I am the way I am and why I think out of the box and don't like labels and am not afraid to speak up. So anyways, he also developed a whole entire system of medicine, and out of that medicine came an herb called mistletoe that has been used as a treatment for cancer. And I'm sure a lot of you have probably, hopefully my internet is going still. I really hope. I hope it is. So anyways, a lot of you are probably hearing about mistletoe lately as a cancer treatment. Well, Dr. Costas was at the conference. She's from Brazil. She's been diving not deep into mistletoe, but diving into the system of medicine behind the use of mistletoe. And I have not brought mistletoe into my practice because I was waiting to learn from somebody who holds that herb within their heart. And she got up on the very first lecture and put up a slide with mistletoe on it and said, "This is sacred medicine." And I knew I was in the right place and I knew I was with the right person. So she and I actually talked about maybe taking a group to Ireland someday. So she was there and I spent all day with her. I will write up more about it. It was amazing. I sat there. Anthroposophical medicine fits in very well with the 5-element system of Chinese medicine that I teach about. And I use 5 elements as a way of preventative medicine in my online course in Community Gateway to Gaia. So when I was listening about the anthroposophical medicine, because I'd gone to a Waldorf school, it was like, I already know this stuff. Doesn't everybody see the world through this lens? No, obviously they don't. But it's one reason why I have adopted the 5-element system so heavily in my work that I do. So I'm going to be probably talking more about that as well in my online group. But yeah, so that was amazing. That was day 2. By then my brain was almost full. But on the 3rd day, Neil Hellman was speaking about an advanced acupuncture system called the 8 extraordinary vessels that talk about the development of the body embryologically and how you can actually treat karmic problems, inherited problems via acupuncture. And so I spent 3 days on 3 lectures in there on the 3rd day. And then we had that was the day after the conference banquet, and we had a blast during the banquet. It is a tradition during that banquet that they have a really good DJ that plays music from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s on up. And actually, we had a full dance floor of people dancing probably for like 2 to 3 hours. It was such a blast. My acupuncture teacher, Dr. Shea, was out there. Everybody was out there, young, old, with their husbands, wives, and we literally just had a blast and let loose. There was so much love. Dr. Shea, speaking of, received a Lifetime Achievement Award from AVA for all that he's done, starting out in a small little ranch-style house outside of Ocala and building this just big, incredible school teaching traditional Chinese veterinary medicine now all around the world. He's even going back to China to teach back there. So it was heartening, it was inspiring, it gave me a new lease on my practice to come back to, and more motivation, and just meeting a bunch of people I hadn't seen in a long time and meeting a bunch of new friends was really fantastic. But all in all, it's a call for us to come together and not be so damn divided over things. And I really, when people are losing their lives over the division, we're in big trouble. And, um, it's not it's there's no excuses for that happening. And I often think that younger generations, have become very disembodied. Those that have grown up with these screens and thinking that reality is happening through the screens. Reality is not happening through the screens. It's a way to report, it's a way to share information, but reality is happening in our physical bodies, wherever our physical bodies are. That was what was so great to go to this conference live, to walk up and hug people, to be out on the dance floor and dance with them, it was a level playing field. We're all out there trying to do our best, and it's veterinarians that have huge hearts. And, that's the other thing about our profession and the division is veterinarians are receiving an extraordinary amount of bashing these days. I mean, and I understand why, and I understand the downfall of it's very difficult to find good veterinary care right now. But you guys have to support the veterinarians out there that are trying to do it, and the organizations that are supporting them and that are recruiting veterinarians to this type of medicine. It's just so important. So again, if you want to put any support towards it, you can contact me. You can go directly to the ahvma.org. I would really like to be able to have a booth at VMX in January, and they don't know if they have enough money in the coffers to do that. So I'm just putting out the word there, and anybody who is having trouble connecting with them or getting through, if you are a vet, let me know, and I can possibly help you out. Okay. So if there's any questions or anything, I really hope my internet didn't go out and you guys got this whole message. I didn't see anybody that Teresa joined. So if you have any questions, any comments, please let me know. It's so weird. It says it's live and it says it's running, so I hope I'm not frozen. Anyways, there's a certain amount of shock involved with where we're all sitting right now, and anybody who has any type of a public platform, I know, has been probably really shook up by this because, is it okay? Great. Thank you, Miriam. You're not frozen. Thank you. Um, I was even talking to my roommate last night, and he's like, well, I'm surprised you haven't received any death threats yourself, just coming out against the umbrella. And that's something that has been in the back of my mind, especially since it is a pharma drug. I have not received any death threats. Maybe they just didn't know how to get a hold of me. Maybe because I'm such a small little person on the outskirts that they weren't concerned about it. But it's something we all have to think about. It's also something we all have to think about in terms of just being women out there. There was a retired large animal vet in Auburn that was walking her dog on a Saturday morning in the local city park and was stabbed to death. And it was around the same time as a train stabbing and Charlie Kirk. So there's some really crazy stuff going on out there. And I had to say, before I took my dogs out for a walk this morning, my dogs, I'm still saying dogs. Molly's still here in spare with me. That's probably why. I had to think twice. And I had to think twice. Am I going to take weapons with me on my dog walk outside my house? So, we need to talk. We need to keep communication lines open. We need to fight this and just stay strong and be there for everybody, and let the light in and let the prayers in. So thank you all. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking time out of your Saturday. I've got to go do my Saturday chores now as well, and we'll be in touch. I'll be back next Saturday. And again, let me know. I do have some topics that I was going to cover. This was just a really special Saturday, I think, just with everything going on and with the theme of coming together and uniting. Um, we as veterinarians, as pet parents, as this whole community, we're we're here for the dogs and the cats and the animals. And that's something very special to come together around. And we need to remember that. And we need to support one another in this mission. Okay. So thank you and be well. Take care. Be safe out there. I love you guys.